Of course, this is not financial advice and for entertainment purposes only. Here's 3 best high-yield Bitcoin and even MicroStrategy dividend ETFs for investing in the stock market. You know it and I know it that Bitcoin and MSTR or strategy stock are some of the best underlying assets for high yield and even some of the best performance for the cover call and high dividend ETF space. Hopefully you know that Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency and MSTR or strategy stock is a single stock that is a levered Bitcoin proxy. So hopefully if Bitcoin goes up, then MicroStrategy will also go up as well and maybe a little bit more. So in this video, you're going to see 3 of the best Bitcoin and strategy ETFs for dividends, whether it's weekly or monthly, as well as one ETF that is a Bitcoin ETF that is great for overall upside appreciation, as well as some honorable mentions. And overall, this is a great video because you will also hear some Wall Street professionals on their ETFs, on their insights, as well as what their thoughts are on Bitcoin long term, because you should know that you should only own a cover call ETF, a high dividend ETF, if the underlying is bullish and can go up. Someone said, Marcos, you are dumb because you said that cover calls perform better when the underlying goes up. And I was like, yeah, it does, because you'll get more premiums, you'll get better upside appreciation, you'll get a better total return than if the underlying was flat or down. And they were like, no, you are not smart. And I was like, okay, well, how about this?
But don't pick ones like, oh, I thought sideways best for cover calls. Nope, up is better for cover calls. Let's snap that somewhere. Up is better for cover calls.
Up is better for cover calls. Up is better for cover calls. You want Bitcoin and strategy to go up. So how do you know if it's going to go up? Well, in this video, you'll hear some insights from Wall Street professionals if Bitcoin and strategy will go up long term, hopefully. But if you don't like Bitcoin, if you don't like strategy, if you are bearish, then don't invest in these ETFs because they are not for you. It's only if you love Bitcoin and are bullish, as well as on strategy stock as well. All right, guys, so one fun fact about me is that right now, before we get started, next year, I am saving up to buy a house and I really want to stay on top of my expenses to make that goal all possible. And today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help. Rocket Money is an easy to use app that helps you save more and manage your money better. I love using Rocket Money to cancel unwanted subscriptions because Rocket Money automatically makes a list of all your subscriptions so you can keep track of all of them in one place. I also love using Rocket Money to set budgets because with Rocket Money, you can create a customized budget within seconds and the app will then show you where your money is going at all times and identify top spending categories with insights on how to stay within your budget way better. All right, guys, so if that all sounds good to you, you can get started with Rocket Money for free. Yes, started with Rocket Money for free by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the link in the description of this video. And you can even unlock more features with Rocket Money using premium, but you can get started for free today with Rocket Money. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin long-term for investors? Because we know that that's the underlying holding in BTCI.
So for BTCI, for me personally, I own all of our ETFs, so all 12 of them. Ones that I own more of are the ones that pay more because I look at it as I believe that the NASDAQ 100 is going to grow many times over during my investing life cycle. I look at Bitcoin and I know that Bitcoin is going to continue to grow and I like the income that comes off Bitcoin. So for me, I like Bitcoin. We don't as a firm put out a firm target or, say where we think Bitcoin's going to be down the road. But I personally, like I said, I own all 12, but Bitcoin is definitely one of the bigger holdings in my portfolio just because I like that exposure. But it's not the biggest. I really lean more towards the high income plays like SPY and QQQI.
BTCI by Neos is a great fund because Neos is one of the most trusted brands for cover calls for high dividends every single month. So this fund pays out a distribution every single month with no NAV erosion, which is great because the underlying asset will hopefully go up long term, but they also don't over distribute to keep your underlying quote unquote protected. You get a super high yield and a great performance as well. It's like the best of all worlds. And NEOS, if you see a NEOS ETF, it's a great high quality ETF because NEOS doesn't want to be that issuer on the street with the highest yield, with the flashiest yield. They want to give you the best total returns. So dividends, distributions, premiums, plus your share price. And they are one of the best on the street right now.
Bitcoin is a huge topic. Bitcoin's at 116,000 and MSTY's been doing solid the last month and last week, last time I checked. What are your thoughts? These are not your firm's thoughts. These are not Title's thoughts. These are not YieldMax's thoughts on Bitcoin. I want to know your thoughts on Bitcoin.
It's pretty clear at this point, Bitcoin is much more mainstream than it was 5-10 years ago. Great. Let's just all accept it's not going to zero. It's not a scam. Okay, check. I can say that. Look, if you listen to a Michael Saylor, and I know you want my opinion, but I'll quote him a little bit, like the compounded annual growth rate of Bitcoin outpaces almost every equity market. So if you're in the business of growth and asset appreciation and you are doing some investing, you have to have some Bitcoin in your portfolio. You just do. I don't care how you're going to get it. You want to get it through MSTR, MSTY. You want to get it directly by holding Bitcoin in a crypto Coinbase account. Like whatever it is you want to have, you should have some level of exposure. Your comfort level is everybody's, choice. But it's something I certainly hold some Bitcoin for myself, but it's not going away. It's here.
YieldMax's MSTY MSTY, a great high quality fund by YieldMax, only because you have to be bullish on strategies. So this fund pays out a dividend, a distribution, premiums every single 4 weeks, and it has had strong performance if you factor in the distributions every single 4 weeks, which has given this fund the best performance out of so many YieldMax ETFs since inception. You also get a super high yield, and people are going to tell me, Marcos, the NAV erosion is horrible. And I'm going to say, hold up, factor in the income, factor in the distributions, and you're going to get some of the best returns from MSTY. And it is a great fund if you love Bitcoin and if you love strategy stock of MSTR.
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin? Long-term hold, any predictions, any personal feelings about Bitcoin? I know it's super important for this ETF, especially with strategy being that leveraged Bitcoin proxy.
I personally, and this is not, anyone's view or my firm's prediction or anything like this. I personally am a big fan of Bitcoin. I think that there's a lot of potential and opportunity in Bitcoin. I do think that, a few years ago, I was talking about Bitcoin quite a lot on media and TV and saying like, I could definitely see it getting to 100K and it was, around 50 or 60K back then. And so, I can see that next move again of that doubling, for, kind of for a lot of reasons. But, so I'm a long-term holder of Bitcoin and crypto. And because of that MicroStrategy, because it really is a proxy for Bitcoin. And if you look at how MicroStrategy performs over time as compared to Bitcoin, it tends to almost at baseline be a levered play on Bitcoin itself without the leverage. And so then if you look at our levered ETFs, it's even more interesting.
Defiance's MST is a great fund for weekly income, as well as strong performance that can be super strong if MicroStrategy goes up long term, because this fund has leverage, which is a double-edged sword. You can get the best returns possible in an upward market, but also the worst returns possible in a downward market. And MST has a great high yield. And if you love strategy stocks so much, then MST is the one for you. But it's super high risk. With anything, is always going to be high risk with all these funds. But MST can outperform MSTY. It can always beat, or not always, but it can beat MSII, MSTW because of the highly implied leverage in this fund. So be sure to do your own research because this fund is super high risk, but it can be very, very high reward.
The future of Bitcoin, this is not Quantify Fund's perspective. This is not your client's perspective. This is just your perspective and thoughts. So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin for the future? And should investors be looking to add Bitcoin in their portfolio? And can BTGD be that ETF to add to their portfolio for Bitcoin exposure?
Well, as you said, please speak with your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. But what I would say is, I'll start with, I guess, the investment case for Bitcoin and gold, and starting with Bitcoin, or the commonality is between the two is their mining rates. So Bitcoin post halving last year mines at 86 basis points a year. That's 0.86%, less than 1% new supply of Bitcoin a year. And paper currencies are going to continue to print at a 7 to 9% rate. And then you say, well, both of these assets are at or near all-time highs. So are stocks, so are real estate. At what level do people own these assets in their portfolio? And the institutional world hasn't yet really fully adopted Bitcoin. The advisors, there's very few institutional firms that actually allow their advisors to allocate to Bitcoin on discretion. And the ones that have just turned it on in the last 3 months. And I do think there's going to be a domino effect there. Obviously, that doesn't mean that these assets can't have volatility. They will absolutely have volatility. But over the long run, supply and demand matter. When Bitcoin had a 15% mining rate, it was a totally different asset. It's mining at less than 1% a year, and that's only going down from here. You have the ETFs gobbling up assets. You have the treasury companies gobbling up assets. You have the institutional world slowly increasing their allocations. And I think, with any suitable high volatility investment, if you are at zero in any of these and it's suitable for you, maybe dollar cost average in and, spend 6 weeks, 8 weeks just slowly building to a position that you feel comfortable with.
So BTGD is crushing, like I said before, IBIT, any gold ETF, any Bitcoin only ETF, you guys are crushing it. My thoughts are, why is BTGD outperforming both these asset classes? I know that gold has been on a tear lately, Bitcoin as well. Your fund, I'm pretty sure you're pretty impressed with the performance, so I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, the performance comes from two assets with a little bit of leverage that have positive returns. And so since we launched both gold and Bitcoin, I think gold is in the 20s and Bitcoin is in the 70% return. And we're up about right in the low 90s between the two. And so that's the beauty of stacking assets like this. Like, you don't have to choose between one or the other. Even if you're diversifying a portfolio that's 50-50 two assets, you're making a choice between those two assets. And there is obviously some increased volatility by using a little bit of leverage here.
In terms of building a long-term growth portfolio, are investors who don't have any gold or Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin, leaving out maybe like returns on the table long-term?
Yeah, I mean, you're leaving out potential for returns and also potential for diversification. I am by no means saying that you shouldn't own equities, especially if you're an aggressive individual, especially if you're earlier on in your investment career. You absolutely need to allocate very heavy to equities. But you need other assets that, again, have positive returns and have some diversification benefits to that beta that you're getting from equities. And you're hearing it from everyone, whether it's like Paul Tudor Jones. Ray Dalio just came out with a piece yesterday that was basically like stocks, gold, and Bitcoin. Like a lot of the institutional world and the minds that we listen to are coming to the same conclusion at the same time right now, that, we're in this deficit and debt situation that our best case scenario is we pray we have 3% inflation and AI completely outpaces that. And what does that mean? That means that like our dollar is going to erode at a very quick pace, and that's the best case scenario, right? Again, they can't print more gold and they can't print more Bitcoin. It's not that these assets are like the greatest things in the world. It's just that they actually have real scarcity.
So I want to know your thoughts on Bitcoin right now, on gold right now, the case for them right now in the next 1 year and even in the next 5 years for investors.
Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record, but the case is our deficits. We just keep spending, and so money, when it's printed, needs to find a way to end somewhere, and it really comes down to the supply and demand. So I do think that we've seen a really good run in Bitcoin here. I don't think it's necessarily over in the short run. I think we can go much higher here, and there's a lot more adoption from the institutional world. And at some point, from the financial advisor community, it becomes a risk to not have any Bitcoin, right? It is now a top 10 asset in the world in terms of its size. If you look at all stocks, commodities, this and that, it's a top 10 asset in the world. It's not an asset that can be ignored anymore. So I think people see these returns and get a little bit worried. And that's why we talked earlier, always dollar cost average in with any of these volatile assets, including the equities in your portfolio. You should never just full port the S&P 500 on one given day. But no, these are the assets that you have to own. There's subsets of the equity market that will do well, but I think that the scarcity profile of these things has just really started to kick in on the price level. The most dangerous words on Wall Street is this time is different. This time actually is different because we are not really acting and looking like the developed nation leader of the world country that we have been in the past. In the pullbacks in April, you saw both stocks and bonds and the dollar go down at once. Historically, that really only happens to emerging market economies. So again, until we stop looking more and more like an emerging market economy from the solvency of our government, Bitcoin and gold are still really the place to be. I think you could argue, biotech and genome is interesting as well. You're just looking for any areas of growth that have been depreciated over the last 5 years. I think you can trade treasuries like an asset. I think anytime, you see the 30-year go anywhere north of like 5.5, creeping up to 6, it can be an interesting trade for a little period of time, but that's not a buy and hold. And so if you're talking about buy and hold assets, like I truly believe it's stocks, it's Bitcoin and gold should be the pillars of your portfolio that you build around.
People have more exposure to gold than Bitcoin. So in terms of allocating an ETF with gold and Bitcoin or just them by themselves, what kind of allocation should investors think about?
Yeah, again, not financial advice, but I think a 5 to 10% allocation to Bitcoin and a 5 to 10% allocation to gold is definitely warranted in your portfolio. Let's say you're someone who just had Bitcoin, like first off, congratulations. That's been the asset class to hold for a long period of time, but to anticipate further rallies with no volatility is somewhat irrational. I actually heard an economist say this once, you have an asset that went from 1 cent to $100,000, right? That's so many decimal points that it moved. The likelihood that it will move back 1 to 1.5 decimal points on its way to being $1 million asset is really, really high, right? And I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime in the near future, but that means that's like a 70, 80% drawdown. Like this is a very volatile asset. To anticipate that this thing will never have a volatility moment of like greater than 50% is irrational. And just good portfolio management would lead you to diversify a little bit to those other two. And again, BTGD gives you an option of doing so without sacrificing that Bitcoin allocation.
This fund is super underrated because yes, it has no income. I know, no cover calls, no distributions, which is okay because this fund has been crushing it with no NAV erosion, and it has the upside appreciation with 100% exposure to Bitcoin plus 100% exposure to gold. You get diversification, all the benefits of Bitcoin and all the benefits of gold in this one ETF. And it's super underrated. So if you love MSTY, if you love BTCI, if you love MST, MSTW, MSII, then you might love BTGD to pair with it for the best returns possible. And yes, guys, all these funds are going to be super high risk. Now, the most amount of risk will be MST, followed by MSTY, followed by BTCI, followed by BTGD. Now, yes, all the income will be super volatile and depend on the implied volatility of Bitcoin as well as strategy stock. Now, overall, these funds are high risk, but they can be very high reward. Now, if you guys like this video, please give it a like because this cute puppy did. Of course, go ahead and check out our last interview with the fund manager of Quantify funds for BTGD and more insights on Bitcoin in this video right here. I love you guys so much. Crushing the stock market and take it easy. Peace.